Hello, this is Bridge of Stars again. I've been making these videos for quite a few days and weeks during the lockdown, and every day that I make a recording I ask for another character from the angel script to share with you. Now this is an interesting thing because it puzzled me slightly why this character has taken so long to turn up in the series. And I think perhaps I've got an answer to that, but let me start and show you what it is. Right, this is called Wisdom. And it's a really charming character, very easy to remember. It looks rather like a candelabra with 5 lights on it. And therefore it's quite reminiscent of a Jewish menorah. A Jewish menorah has 7 lights on it, and a Jewish Hanukkah has 9 lights on it, because that's used to celebrate Hanukkah, and that's actually a different candle holder. So wisdom. Now, one of the things that we generally feel about wisdom is that it's some kind of higher version of common sense. It's like it's understanding in a way, possibly through life experience, or sometimes some people seem to have some natural gift to make wise decisions. It's a kind of being sensible kind of thing, only on a really special scale. However, the word wise actually is related to the word wizard. So being wise is being a person who understands the magical realms of existence, the invisible realms of existence. And this was why King Solomon was called wise. You probably know the story of King Solomon and how he behaved when two women came to him with one baby, both claiming it belonged to them. And so he said, well, the best way to deal with this is to cut the baby in half. So of course the true woman, the true mother, said, no, please don't do that, give it to the other lady. And so he knew which was the right mother, and gave the baby to her. And this is regarded as a kind of a story about, how wise he was, how intelligent he was to make a judgment like that. But King Solomon is famous for much, much more than that. And one of the really significant stories about Solomon is that he built this amazing temple. And it is reported that he built the temple with the help of the jinn. Now the jinn are these characters of fire and air, smoky characters who exist in the Arabic stories. You've probably come across them. It's very close to the word genie, of course. And they have certain powers over the earth plane. And King Solomon was able to command these jinn, the genie, that's the plural, and they would do his bidding. Right, so it's quite a magical story. And that was how he got this temple built, because he was moving, or he was persuading these magical forces to move the stones around for him. So this goes back to certain old legends and ideas in ancient history, that at some point people, especially knowledgeable people, were able to almost levitate stones. And some people think perhaps the pyramids and various other antique buildings were created with the use of that mental technology, not just physical technology. So King Solomon is reported to be one of those kind of people who knew that kind of stuff, right? And this is very interesting because there are lots of references in biblical texts and also in other Persian texts to the idea that if you're kind of tuned in to the cosmos, you can get to grips with the material world in a much more fundamental way, so that you don't have to pick up the stones yourself, right? You don't have to dig the wells or plant the vineyards. It actually says that in the Bible texts. And therefore, these extraordinary abilities, superpowers, you could say, or paranormal powers, are available to people who are kind of tuned in to the cosmos. So their consciousness, their spiritual activity, their spiritual level is totally tuned in with the material level. And that's when things can be, we would say, manifested, but a better word is created. So that when we tune in, we create the world that we want, the temple that we want, perhaps. And so the machinations of 1, 2, 3, 4, well, this is how we do it, because we have to get a pulley and a crane and a lever to lift these blocks of stones to build our skyscrapers or our temples or whatever. That can be skirted around because there's something else, a different way of doing things. And as I say, there's many ancient stories about people who had those superpowers and were able to manipulate material reality in a way which we don't quite understand. We would jolly well like to put ourselves in that position again. So that's what the wisdom is about. And the wisdom resides in us at some place. And we've kind of forgotten some of it. We have left behind certain amount of knowledge that was given to our ancestors, the shining ancestors, I call them, beings that lived on this planet, possibly we don't know where, but maybe in a part of the Middle East, and were creating their own temples, creating a kind of paradise type environment for themselves, and then something was lost, and that gives rise to the story of the Garden of Eden, that something was a mismatch and certain groups of people were expelled from that situation. Whether the shining ancestors still have a haven up in the mountain areas of the Himalayas, say, who can say? We wouldn't know unless we tried to go there. So that's part of this story. This story is get the wisdom inside you and start seeing what can happen and how things can change in your life. I'm not suggesting you're going to go and build a temple or start, magicking great big stones, but I am suggesting that once you get to the wisdom within you, you start to much more easily manifest exactly what is right for you. Now, here's a puzzle. There were lots of puzzles for me when I first channeled these messages. And it took me a long time, actually, to notice that in the deck of the angel script cards, there are 2 cards for wisdom. One of them is this character, but the other is one of the archangels. So I want to introduce you to this archangel, Raziel. Now, what I'm going to say about Raziel will come up again in the Path Working with Archangels series that I'm doing. So if you're watching both of these, you may hear some of this twice. So Raziel is a very remarkable and interesting archangel in the pantheon of archangels. Raziel stands on a rock it's said. His other name is Galizer. Zer means rock. And the task of Raziel is to stand on that rock behind a veil. And the veil hides the divine throne. And Raziel is, his task is to take information from the divine throne and pass it down to the humankind. Now, when we have the issue of the Garden of Eden, what happens is that Adam and Eve, being naughty children, are turned out of the playground, the beautiful playground where everything is nice for them, and they're turned out, and then Adam is bitterly unhappy, and he rants and raves and sends up his prayers to Yahweh, oh, please forgive us, please forgive us. And he does this for 3 days, and Yahweh's got no, he's not listening. He doesn't want to know. He can hear, but he's not listening. And eventually Yahweh gets so peed off that he sends Raziel down to Adam and Eve with a book. So Raziel's book is a very famous document in old Jewish mystical texts. The original book is reputed to have been made of lapis lazuli, and it's got all this wisdom in it. It's got wisdom about herbs, it's got wisdom about astrology, it's got wisdom about practical stuff, how you do things in the world. So it's meant to equip Adam and Eve. It's a manual for life, so that they can get on. They're still going to suffer. Eve is still going to suffer having her babies, and they will know death, which they didn't know when they were in the Garden of Eden. So that's not alleviated for them, but the book gives them the stuff that they need to know. So Raziel's gift to humanity is all this wisdom. So he's giving the wisdom. He's giving, you could call it the knowledge. So the astrology and understanding how herbs work, all those slightly mystical or very mystical skills that humans have been guarding and treasuring over the centuries were given by Raziel. And of course those skills are generally dismissed by the quote scientific community, and that's partly because the scientific community has not bothered to investigate them properly. So Raziel brings this gift. He's quite electric, you can see that, and I'll talk a bit more about him in Path Working with Archangels, so do join that course if that's if you want to know more about Raziel. So that's what I've got with the cards for today, and if you want to work with them more deeply, you can buy a set from the shop, and I recommend looking at them from the point of view of both the characters and the archangels, and understanding through them that you personally have a gateway. Everybody's got a gateway through into these extended realms of consciousness. We kind of limit our consciousness. I often think it's rather like a camera and a lens on a camera, and in order to do our everyday life, to be efficient, as I call it, we have to scale down the aperture on that lens and make it really focused. Oh, I've got to do that, I've got this list, I've got that list, I've got to earn this money, all that stuff, right? However, if we open the aperture, give it an opportunity to take in such an extended, expanded level of consciousness, and I often use the word expanded rather than ascended, because it goes in both directions. If it's expanded, it goes up and wide. That is when we start getting the knowledge. That's when we start understanding how this is all working. What on earth is going on? We start to see it deeply in the heart, which is where the wisdom is. So that is those are the script characters for today, and I'm now going to share something from our Bridge of Stars. I thought this was rather lovely. This is from the Zend Avesta, which is a Zoroastrian text. And Zoroaster was a prophet in the area that we would call Persia, Iran now, and nobody quite knows exactly how long ago that was, but it was certainly quite a few thousand years ago. And Zoroaster's concepts and his understanding, his mystical understanding of the wise beings, the Amisha Spenters, the bounteous immortals, predates our understanding of archangels, and is very, very similar. So this is from the Zendavesta. We praise the Creator, the Lord of Light. We praise the Teacher, the Lord of Purity. We praise the stars, the moon, the sun, and the trees. We praise the mountains, the waters, the pastures, and our homes set among them. We praise all good men and women. We praise all good women. He does say that. We praise you, our home, O earth. We praise you, O God, Lord of the earth. And it is said that the Zoroastrian tradition did give equal praise to women, and that they held very high positions in that culture. So, I will be back again in a couple of days' time. Many blessings and stay joyful.